I didn't miss Christmas dinner because I forgot the time. I didn't miss it because I didn't care. I missed it because somewhere between the smell of antiseptic and burnt coffee, between the sound of alarms and the quiet hum of exhausted breathing, the ER decided it wasn't done with me yet. Christmas Eve shifts are supposed to be lighter. That's the lie everyone tells themselves to survive signing up for them. Most people stay home, they say. It's calm, they say. You'll be out on time. I knew better. I've been a nurse long enough to know that holidays don't soften emergencies. If anything, they sharpen them. That night, I tied my hair back tighter than usual. I wore the stupid red socks my sister gave me as a joke, the ones with tiny reindeer on them. I told myself I'd clock out at 7, drive straight to my mom's house, walk in while everyone was already halfway through dinner, and hear my name shouted across the room. I imagined the warmth, the noise, the normality, and then the doors opened. The ER on Christmas Eve has its own atmosphere. It's quieter, but not peaceful. It's like the building itself is holding its breath. The lights feel harsher. Every sound carries farther. Even laughter sounds wrong, like it wandered into the wrong room. Around 5:30, things were steady, busy, but manageable. I remember thinking, just for a second, that maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe this would be one of those rare shifts that ended on time. That's usually when everything breaks. The first thing that hit me wasn't panic. It was confusion. A triage note that didn't make sense. Vitals that didn't line up with how the patient looked. I remember staring at the monitor longer than I should have, feeling that familiar tightening in my chest. When I realized something was off, it wasn't dramatic. No alarms blaring, no shouting, just that quiet internal voice that says, "Pay attention. This matters." I've learned to trust that voice more than protocols sometimes. The patient was older, but not fragile in the way people expect. Alert, talking, even joking a little. That's what scared me later, when I replayed it in my head. How normal it all seemed at first. I remember thinking about the clock. 5:42. I still had time. I could finish charting, hand off, and leave. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it, but I knew who it was. My sister always texts too early, asking where I am, as if the answer might magically change. When I finally looked later, I'd have 5 missed messages. At the time, I was focused on a detail no one else seemed to notice. The ER doesn't reward hesitation. If you speak up too softly, you get buried under noise. If you wait for certainty, it passes you by. I've learned that confidence matters almost as much as being right. So I said something. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to be heard. And I watched the room hesitate. That's the moment I always come back to. The pause. That half second where everyone decides whether to keep moving forward or stop and reassess. It's uncomfortable. It feels like stepping on a brake when you're already speeding. Some people don't like that feeling. I could feel it in the way the doctor looked at me. Not angry, not dismissive, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't want complications on a holiday shift. I get it. I really do. We were all thinking about where we were supposed to be in an hour, but medicine doesn't care about dinner plans. I didn't argue. I never start there. I repeated what I saw, what bothered me, what didn't add up. I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was picking up speed. When I realized they were about to move on without addressing it, something in me hardened. That's when I knew I wasn't leaving on time. Time in the ER doesn't move normally. Minutes stretch. Hours collapse. You look at the clock, look away, and suddenly it's later than it should be. The decorations on the wall, cheap garlands, taped up paper snowflakes, felt almost mocking as the shift deepened. Around 6:15, the situation shifted. Subtly at first. A change in breathing, a number on the monitor that dipped just enough to catch my eye. The joking stopped. That's when the room got quieter. I remember the smell of gloves snapping into place, the way voices lowered, the way everyone suddenly stopped glancing at the clock. No one said Christmas anymore. I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. Dread, because something was clearly wrong. Relief, because now it wasn't just me who saw it. Things escalated fast after that. Orders came quickly. Movements became sharper. There's a rhythm to controlled urgency, and the room found it. I don't remember every detail, but I remember how my hands felt. Steady, focused, like they belonged to someone who knew exactly what to do, even if my mind was racing ahead. At some point, I became aware of the clock again. 6:58. I should have been washing my hands, grabbing my bag, sending that "on my way" text. Instead, I was counting breaths. The patient's family arrived somewhere in the middle of all of it. They always do, don't they? Right when things tip from manageable to serious, they came in carrying coats and holiday bags, eyes full of confusion, smiles fading as they took in the room. That's one of the hardest parts of this job. Watching reality hit people in stages. I caught fragments of conversation. Someone asking if everything was okay. Someone else saying they'd just stepped out for a moment. The disconnect between expectation and reality hung heavy in the air. When I realized how late it was, it felt almost absurd. 7:30, then 8. My phone buzzed again, and this time I felt it against my leg, insistent. I didn't look, not because I didn't care, but because at that point, caring meant staying exactly where I was. There's a specific kind of guilt that comes with missing something important for work. It's sharper on holidays. It whispers questions you don't have time to answer. Was this really necessary? Could someone else have handled it? I've asked myself those questions 1,000 times. That night, I didn't have the luxury. The situation reached a point where the room filled with people who hadn't been there at the start. That's always a sign. When fresh faces appear, serious ones, you know the night has changed shape. I remember stepping back for half a second, just long enough to notice my reflection in a glass cabinet. Hair frizzed, eyes alert, no trace of Christmas on my face at all. I wondered briefly what my family was doing right then. Who was sitting in my chair, whether they'd started eating without me, whether my mom was pretending not to be disappointed. That thought hurt more than I expected, but it didn't slow me down. Somewhere between tasks, I heard someone say, "Good catch." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was said the way professionals acknowledge each other when something important has already passed. That's when it hit me. Whatever this night was becoming, I was already part of it. There was no clean exit anymore. By the time the situation stabilized, not resolved, just steadied, it was well past 8:30. The room exhaled collectively, like we'd all been underwater and finally reached the surface. I stepped out into the hallway and checked my phone for the first time in hours. There were photos, plates of food, my niece wearing the sweater I'd helped pick out. A short message from my mom that just said, "We saved you some." That one almost broke me. I leaned against the wall for a moment longer than necessary, letting the weight of the night press in. The decorations seemed cruel now. Tinsel catching fluorescent light. A paper Santa smiling at nothing. I told myself I'd explain later. That they'd understand. That this was just part of the job. I've said those things before. But standing there, exhausted, hungry, emotionally wrung out, I couldn't ignore the truth. This wasn't just about missing dinner. It was about what this job asks of you when no one is watching. And the night wasn't over yet. I went back in. Because that's what you do. When I walked back into the room, the energy had changed, but the tension hadn't left. It never really does. It just settles lower, like fog instead of a storm. The patient was stable enough for the moment. Not fine, not even close. Just not actively sliding anymore. In the ER, that counts as a small victory, even if it doesn't feel like one. I picked up where I'd left off without thinking about it. That's muscle memory. That's survival. You don't re-enter a situation emotionally. You re-enter operationally. Check lines, recheck numbers, listen, observe. But something inside me was quieter now. Not calm, just heavy. The kind of heaviness that only shows up after the adrenaline starts to drain. I kept thinking about that message from my mom. We saved you some. Such a simple sentence. No guilt. No pressure. Just acceptance. That somehow made it harder. People who don't work in healthcare imagine moments like this as dramatic sacrifices. Like we're constantly choosing heroism over comfort. That's not what it feels like. It feels like missing something you can't get back and telling yourself it was unavoidable, even when part of you wonders if it really was. Around 9, the family was allowed back in. They looked different now, less confused, more scared. Reality had caught up with them. I stood slightly to the side, doing my best to be present without being intrusive. Families watch nurses closely in those moments. We become emotional weather vanes. If we look confident, they breathe easier. If we hesitate, they spiral. I kept my face neutral, professional, warm enough to be human, controlled enough to be trusted. Inside, I was exhausted. One of them asked me what had happened, not accusing, just searching for something solid to hold on to. I explained what I could, carefully. Clearly, without overstepping. Years of practice go into making something complex sound understandable, without sounding terrifying. They nodded. One of them thanked me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded back. Gratitude in moments like that feels strange. You want to accept it, but it lands heavy. Like a reminder that what you do here actually matters, even when it costs you something personal. By the time everything settled enough for me to finally step away, it was close to 10. Christmas dinner was long over. I changed out of my scrubs slowly. My hands felt clumsy, like they belonged to someone else. I caught my reflection again, this time in the locker mirror. The red socks were still there, a ridiculous detail, surviving an unreasonable night. For a second, I laughed. A short, breathless sound that surprised me. Then I felt that familiar emotional drop, the one no one warns you about. When the noise stops and the silence hits all at once. I sat for a moment longer than necessary, just breathing. Driving home felt surreal. The streets were quieter than usual. Houses glowed softly through windows. I passed decorations I hadn't noticed on the way in. Inflatable figures, lights blinking lazily. Evidence of a world that had been celebrating while I was counting breaths and watching monitors. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel proud either. I felt split. Part of me wished I'd been there, laughing, eating food that was probably cold by now. Sitting next to people who love me for reasons that have nothing to do with my job. Another part of me knew, with uncomfortable clarity, that if I'd left when I was supposed to, I would have spent the entire dinner wondering what happened after I walked out. That's the part no one talks about. When you miss moments like that, it's not always because you were forced to stay. Sometimes it's because leaving would follow you home. When I finally walked into my mom's house, it was quiet. Plates were stacked, chairs slightly out of place. Evidence of a gathering that had already wound down. My family looked up like they weren't sure if I was really there. My mom hugged me without saying anything. No questions, no disappointment, just warmth. Someone reheated a plate for me. I ate standing up at the counter, still half in work mode, answering gentle questions with vague answers. They didn't push. They never do. Later that night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. That's another thing people don't realize. Even when your body is exhausted, your mind doesn't just shut off. It replays, it questions, it reframes. I kept thinking about that moment early in the shift, the one where I spoke up, the pause that followed, how easily things could have gone differently if I'd stayed quiet. I thought about how close I'd been to walking out on time. And I thought about how strange it is that one decision can ripple so far outward, into someone else's life, into your own holiday memories, into the quiet understanding between you and your family. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy. I don't tell it to sound noble. I tell it because this is what the job actually looks like when you strip away the drama. It's not constant chaos. It's moments, decisions, trade-offs that don't feel heroic while you're making them. Missing Christmas dinner wasn't the worst thing that happened that night, but it was the thing that stayed with me. Because long after the shift ends, after the charts are closed and the scrubs are in the wash, you're left with the quiet question, what did this cost me? And was it worth it? There isn't a clean answer. Some years I still feel the ache when Christmas comes around. Other years, I feel a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. Both feelings can exist at the same time. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you for listening, truly. It means more than you probably realize. And if you want to hear more real, unfiltered stories from inside the ER, told from the perspective of someone who actually lived them, consider subscribing and sharing this with someone who might understand. Thank you for being here.